She never missed a shift, never called in sick, never complained. But tonight was different. From his sleek glass-walled office, Ethan Cole had built Cole Freight Solutions into a multi-million-dollar empire. He believed in one thing: hard work always pays off. No shortcuts, no excuses. If you put in the hours, you earned your way. That was the rule. But as he glanced up from his reports, something caught his attention. The cafeteria was supposed to be closed, yet someone was still inside. A woman, hesitant, nervous. It was Maya Brooks, one of his most reliable employees. Always the first to clock in, the last to leave. She handled double shifts like they were nothing, kept the warehouse running like a machine. So why was she standing there, shifting from foot to foot, looking over her shoulder like she was doing something wrong? Ethan watched as she approached, the kitchen staff. He couldn't hear the conversation, but he saw the way the cook's brows knitted together. A hesitation, a quick exchange of glances, and then, finally, a takeout container was handed over. Maya murmured a thank you, tucked the container into her oversized tote, and walked away. Fast. Head down, shoulders tense, as if she didn't want anyone to see. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his fingers tightening around his pen. Something wasn't right. He wasn't the kind of CEO who got involved in his employees' personal lives. You worked hard, you got paid. Simple. But Maya worked harder than anyone. If there was a crisis, she showed up. If someone called out, she covered. So why did she need to ask for food? Maybe he was overthinking. Maybe it was nothing. But as he turned back to his reports, the words blurred together. That image, Maya, clutching that takeout box like it was the last meal she'd see. It stuck with him, and before he knew it, Ethan was on his feet. What if there was more to this than he thought? He had built his entire empire on knowing everything. Every number, every detail, every operation. But tonight, for the first time, he realized there was something he didn't know, and he needed to find out. Before we dive in, ask yourself, have you ever worked so hard, yet still struggled to get by? Tell me in the comments below. And if you're ready for the shocking truth behind what Ethan discovers, keep watching, because this story is just getting started. Ethan wasn't the type to second-guess himself. Every move he made was calculated, every decision backed by logic. That's how he built his empire. No distractions, no unnecessary involvement. But tonight, something felt different. He stepped out of his office, the hum of the building now eerily quiet. Most of the employees had already left for the night, yet Maya's footsteps echoed softly against the polished floors as she exited the cafeteria. She didn't head toward the parking lot. No car keys, no waiting ride. Instead, she pulled her thin jacket tighter around herself and walked straight toward the bus stop. Ethan hesitated. This was crossing a line. He was a CEO, not a detective. What the hell was he doing? But as he stood there, watching Maya disappear into the cold night, a nagging thought gnawed at him. She shouldn't have to live like this. Before he could talk himself out of it, he grabbed his coat and followed. The bus was nearly empty, its dim fluorescent lights flickering as it rumbled through the city. Ethan kept his distance, watching Maya from a few rows back. She sat near the window, her forehead resting against the glass, eyes hollow with exhaustion. There was no self-pity, no frustration, just a quiet, weary acceptance, like someone who had given up waiting for life to get easier. How long had she been living like this? The route took them past the business district, past the bright shopping centers, past the parts of town Ethan had never thought twice about. At some point, the streetlights grew sparse, and the glass skyscrapers turned into rows of aging brick apartments, their walls scarred by time and struggle. Maya pulled the stop cord. Ethan watched as she stepped off, adjusting the strap of her bag with careful precision. Like whatever was inside was all she had left. He hesitated, then followed, keeping to the shadows. The air was thick with the scent of rain on pavement and distant cigarette smoke. The sidewalk was cracked, the glow of the nearest street lamp flickering in and out. Maya turned a corner, heading toward a small, run-down apartment complex. The kind that had seen better days but still carried the silent echoes of people just trying to survive. She climbed the stairs to the second floor, pulled out a key, and pushed open the door. Ethan slowed his steps. Through the thin, tattered curtains, he could see inside, and what he saw made his chest tighten. The apartment was bare, not in the way of someone who had just moved in, but in the way of someone who had been living without for a long time. No furniture, no decorations, no warmth, just a single mattress on the floor, a few blankets, and a small plastic crate stacked neatly with folded clothes. And then, two small heads peeked out from the side of the mattress. Children. Maya knelt beside them, pulling the takeout container from her bag with careful hands. The kids, no older than 5 or 6, scooted forward, their eyes wide with anticipation. She split the meal between them, watching as they ate with quiet urgency. And then, Ethan noticed something that made his stomach drop. Maya didn't take a single bite. She had asked for that food, not for herself, but for them. Ethan stood there, his breath slow and heavy in the cold night air. He had spent years building a business, pushing his employees to work harder, longer, believing that a paycheck was enough. But standing outside that apartment, watching one of his hardest working employees sacrifice her own meal to feed her children. For the first time in his career, he felt something he never expected: shame. Ethan didn't move. He couldn't. The cold wind cut through his coat, but all he could feel was the tightness in his chest. He had spent years studying numbers, efficiency, productivity, but he had never truly looked at the people behind those numbers. And now, he was seeing the truth in the dim glow of a struggling mother's apartment. Inside, Maya sat with her back against the peeling wall, watching her children eat. She didn't touch the food. She just watched. Her daughter, a girl with big, searching eyes, chewed carefully, making the meal last. But her younger brother, he ate quickly, like he was afraid it might disappear. Maya reached out, gently placing a hand on his arm, murmuring something soft. A mother's instinct. Slow down. Savor it, even when you have so little. Ethan swallowed hard, his throat dry. This wasn't just about someone struggling. This was a mother doing everything in her power to keep her kids fed. And yet, she was still losing the battle. A few minutes later, she stood and walked across the small room, crouching beside a single plastic grocery bag in the corner. She reached in and pulled out a bottle of water. No soda, no juice, just water. She poured a small amount into 2 mismatched cups and handed them to the kids. That was it. That was all she had. Ethan exhaled, his breath visible in the cold air. He had never worried about food, never had to wonder if there would be enough tomorrow, never had to lie to a child just to help them sleep. And then, as if the universe wanted to make this moment even more unbearable, a small voice broke the silence inside. "Mommy, are we gonna have breakfast tomorrow?" Ethan's stomach twisted. Maya hesitated, just for a second, just long enough for the weight of that question to settle into her bones. Then she forced a smile. Not for herself, for them. "Of course, baby. I'll figure it out." Her daughter nodded, believing her. Because when you're that young, your mother's word is law. But Ethan saw it. The way Maya's shoulders tensed, the way she gripped the empty water bottle just a little, too tightly. She had no idea how she was going to make that happen. Outside, a gust of wind rattled a loose metal sign, snapping Ethan back to reality. He took a step back, his mind racing. This wasn't just an unfortunate situation. This was a broken system. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure if just working hard was enough to fix it. Ethan sat in his car across the street, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. The street was quiet, except for the occasional gust of wind that sent trash skittering along the pavement. But in his mind, there was nothing but Maya's voice. "Of course, baby. I'll figure it out." She didn't know how. She had no plan, no safety net, no one to fall back on. And yet, she had smiled. Because that's what mothers do. Ethan had spent years believing in one thing: hard work leads to success. That if you just push yourself harder, grind longer, you'll make it. But Maya was working harder than anyone. And she still wasn't making it. His phone buzzed beside him, a meeting reminder for the next morning. For the first time in years, he let it go to voicemail. This wasn't about business anymore. It was about basic human dignity. The truth was harsh, undeniable. He had failed her, not as a boss, not as a CEO, as a human being. The thought made his stomach churn. He had spent his life focused on efficiency, on margins, on growth. But what was the point of success if the very people making it happen couldn't even afford to eat? He leaned his head back against the seat, exhaling slowly. He had two choices. He could drive away, push this to the back of his mind, convince himself that this wasn't his problem. Or he could do something about it. And let me ask you, if you were in his position, what would you do? Because here's the truth. This isn't just Ethan's story. It's real. It's happening right now in companies, in cities, in homes, just like Maya's. So if this moment hit you, if it made you think, hit that like button. Drop a comment below. Because this isn't just about a single mother struggling to put food on the table. It's about all of us finally opening our eyes. And Ethan? He had just opened his. The next morning, Ethan sat at his desk, but his mind was still stuck in that small, empty apartment. The reports on his screen? Blurry, meaningless. The numbers, the projections, the endless stream of business decisions. None of it mattered. Right now. A soft knock at the door. "Mr. Cole, Maya Brooks is here to see you." Right on time. Ethan inhaled deeply, straightening in his chair. This conversation could change everything. "Send her in." Maya stepped in cautiously, her posture rigid, her eyes guarded. The same woman who handled double shifts like they were nothing now sat across from him looking small. Not because she was weak, because life had worn her down. "You wanted to see me, sir." Her voice was steady, but there was a hesitation beneath it, a quiet wariness. Ethan met her gaze. How did he even begin? Finally, he just said it. "I saw you last night." Maya stiffened. "Excuse me?" "I followed you home." Silence. A dangerous, razor-sharp silence. Her hands clenched in her lap, shoulders tensing like she was preparing for humiliation. Her eyes flickered toward the door, calculating how fast she could leave. I don't understand," she murmured, voice tight. Ethan leaned forward. "I saw you take that food home. I saw your apartment. Your kids." A sharp breath. Maya's entire body went still. And for the first time, Ethan saw it. Not just exhaustion, but fear. Not fear of him. Fear of what came next. Was she about to lose her job? Was this the moment everything collapsed? I don't need," she started, but Ethan cut her off. "I'm not here to judge you." That made her pause. "I should have seen it sooner," he admitted, voice lower now. "And I want to fix it." The words hung in the air, heavy, uncertain. Maya let out a slow breath, but her fingers stayed clenched. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. Ethan shook his head. "Yes, I do." Maya turned away, blinking rapidly, as if trying to hold something back. Pride? Frustration? Hope? "I don't want a handout," she finally said. Her voice was quiet but firm. Ethan respected that. "This isn't a handout," he answered. This is me correcting a mistake I didn't realize I was making. Maya looked at him, searching for the catch, the hidden cost. I've worked here for 5 years, she said slowly. I take every shift I can. I do everything right. And it's still not enough. Her voice cracked on the last word, and Ethan felt it. Deep. I know, he admitted. And that's the problem. He reached for a folder on his desk, sliding it toward her. Maya eyed it warily. What is this? A new internal program, Ethan said. Effective immediately. Higher wages. Emergency childcare assistance. Financial planning resources. Not just for you, for everyone. Maya's lips parted slightly, but no words came. Her fingers twitched toward the folder. Slowly, hesitantly, she picked it up. Her hands trembled just a little. For the first time since she walked in, she exhaled without tension. Thank you, she whispered. Ethan nodded. No, he said quietly. Thank you for holding on long enough for me to see it. Maya sat there, gripping the folder as if it might disappear if she let go. For years, she had learned not to expect help, not because she didn't deserve it, but because it never came. Now, sitting across from the man who had unknowingly overlooked her struggle for so long, she wasn't sure what to feel. Relief? Gratitude? Doubt? Ethan could see the battle happening inside her. She wasn't used to being seen. And that was the real problem. Finally, she swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper. You think raising my pay is going to change everything? Ethan didn't hesitate. No, he admitted. But it's a start. She searched his face, waiting for the usual corporate nonsense, the empty promises, the scripted sympathy. But this time, there was none of that. He meant it. And that was something Maya hadn't seen in a long time. She exhaled, nodding once, not in full agreement, not in blind trust, but in acknowledgement. Like she was saying, we'll see. She stood to leave, still gripping the folder, her steps a little lighter than before. But just as she reached the door, Ethan did something unexpected. I want to meet them. Maya stopped. Who? She asked cautiously. Your kids. Her grip tightened on the folder, not in fear, not in anger, in disbelief. Why? Ethan didn't hesitate. Because if I'm going to fix this company, I need to remember who I'm fighting for. Maya didn't answer right away. The silence stretched between them, thick, uncertain. Then, after a long pause, she gave the smallest nod. Maybe. And with that, she walked out of his office. But for the first time, she wasn't walking with her head down. And Ethan, he wasn't the same man who had walked into work that morning. A week passed. Ethan didn't just throw money at the problem. He tore it apart from the inside out. He sat down with HR, reviewed every employee's wages, restructured the entire pay scale. No more empty promises. No more employees working themselves to exhaustion with nothing to show for it. Executive bonuses? Cut. Meal programs? Implemented. Emergency childcare assistance? Approved. Financial literacy workshops? Launched. No one would have to ask for extra food ever again. But the biggest change? Ethan himself. One evening, as the city skyline glowed in the distance, he found himself standing in front of a small apartment door he never imagined knocking on. It opened. Maya stood there, eyes filled with something different this time. Not exhaustion, not doubt, something softer. Hope. You actually came, she said, crossing her arms. Ethan gave a small nod. I said I would. She hesitated, then stepped aside, letting him in. The apartment wasn't empty anymore. A couch now sat against the wall. A small dining table in the corner. The kids had backpacks hanging by the door. A few toys scattered on the floor. It wasn't luxury. But it was home. Two small figures peeked around the corner. Maya's daughter was the first to step forward, clutching a stuffed bear in her hands. Big, curious eyes stared up at Ethan. "This is Mr. Cole," Maya said gently. "Mommy's boss." The little girl tilted her head. "The one who makes the rules." Ethan knelt slightly. "I used to," he admitted. "But your mom helped me change them." Her lips parted slightly, considering this. Then she smiled. A tiny, cautious smile, but a real one. "Good." And just like that, Ethan knew this wasn't just about business anymore. This was about people. Because hard work should lead to more than just survival. It should lead to a life worth living. And now, he would make sure it did. If this story moved you, tell me in the comments. Have you ever felt unseen at work? Have you ever struggled despite giving it your all? Let's talk about it. Like this video. Share it. Because the more people who see this, the more we start to change the conversation. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. Because this is just the beginning.